The only one of its kind in South Africa, Onderstepoort Veterinary Academic Hospital takes pride of place within the University of Pretoria's Faculty of Veterinary Science. It offers comprehensive, affordable treatment to furry, feathered, and scaled patients, including pets and wildlife of all shapes and sizes, 24 hours a day. You can be confident that all our patients are in caring and competent hands of qualified experts assisted by enthusiastic, attentive students under professional supervision. The facility is a center of excellence, with specialists covering an unrivaled variety of disciplines all under one roof. We serve the community through our location visits to help care for those who can't do so themselves. Each case becomes a model of best practice, clinically and ethically, with treatment based on scientifically proven research and knowledge. The experience and expertise of the specialists can also provide innovative solutions to unusual problems, and when an inside view is needed, digital radiography, ultrasound, computer tomography, and nuclear imaging are available to facilitate diagnosis. No matter whether you're big with a routine little problem or tiny with a big ache, you'll always be welcome at the Onderstepoort Veterinary Academic Hospital, and you can be sure that you'll receive the best care possible.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the afternoon session. I hope you had an enjoyable lunch and took the opportunity to visit our online sponsors. I'm privileged today to chair the session, which is a special addition to Faculty Day to commemorate our centenary. As everybody would know by now, the faculty was started in 1920 with just 8 students being admitted into the second year of the BVSC program. Today, 100 years later, we admit 200 students into the BVSC program, making us one of the largest amongst the English training veterinary schools in the world. To mark this special occasion, we have introduced a very special keynote address to the day. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Professor Tawana Kupe, who has been with the university as our Vice-Chancellor and Principal since 2019. Professor Kupe holds a DPhil in Media Studies from the University of Oslo in Norway, and is quite active in numerous organizations and is an active voice in the media. Most recently, Professor Kupe was awarded an honorary doctorate by the Montpellier University. Congratulations, Professor Kupe. Today, Professor Kupe will be addressing us on a most apt topic. Science needs to be celebrated, but is that enough? The topic is very fitting for a faculty such as ourselves, as a faculty is best judged by the impact it makes both by itself and its alumni, and not merely for being active in scientific research. Please give a round of applause as we invite Professor Kupe to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session. Recently, I came across a fascinating story that I want to share with you, especially at this esteemed event here and now, where science, history, and research are all core keywords. Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the world's most important acoustical device, the telephone, also tried his hand at recording sound. Bell conducted his sound experiments between 1880 and 1886 and wanted to improve on the work of his great rival, Thomas Edison. The precise methods he employed to play back his recordings are lost to history. During his life, Bell donated an extensive research collection, including more than 400 discs, to the Smithsonian Institution, a venerable institution if you have been. As curious as scientists and historians are, they started wondering how Alexander Graham Bell might have sounded like. In 2011, it was discovered that one wax and cardboard disc from 1885 contained a recording of Bell speaking. In 2012, a dramatic application of digital technology allowed a team of researchers led by none other than a physicist to rediscover Bell's voice from this recording. They were transfixed as they listened to the inventor's voice saying, "In witness thereof, hear my voice, Alexander Graham Bell." Today, we're able to hear the voice of the inventor speaking to us across the years. And indeed, here is his voice.
You are my heart, Alexander Graham Bell.
However, colleagues and students and guests, we can celebrate much more about Alexander Graham Bell than just a fascinating breakthrough to bring his voice to life. Here we are, connected by technology based on the discovery of the telephone. We can also hear each other's voices on a regular basis via landline and mobile phone. In quite a different part of the world, during more or less the same time Alexander Graham Bell was doing his sound experiments, a boy named Arnold Tiller was still at school in Switzerland. After attending the universities in Bern and Zurich, he passed his state examinations in 1889 and qualified as a veterinarian. In 1891, he arrived in South Africa, and as you all know, would later become the first dean of the Faculty of Veterinary Science in 1920. Furthermore, he developed the smallpox vaccine for managing the foremost epidemic of the time. Later, he also played a major role in creating a crude rinderpest vaccine to deal with the outbreak that was ravaging the country. These two diseases remain the only two diseases eradicated from human and veterinary health, respectively. What do these two scientists have in common? They changed the course of history in some or other way. Their research and discoveries irreversibly altered the world we are living in and influenced our future thought processes. They laid foundations for future generations to build on and to do more. Numerous examples exist of how science changed the course of history. Some are also quite relevant to today's special event. For instance, Louis Pasteur discovered that disease came from microorganisms and realized that it could be killed by heat and disinfectant. The idea still saves millions of lives. Last Thursday at this particular time, I was inside the Louis Pasteur Institute and toured the museum of his discoveries and his tomb, which is actually in the building. Fascinating history. His work on the role of bacteria in fermentation laid the foundation for sterilization by pasteurization. At the time Alexander Graham Bell performed his experiments, the principle of immunizing susceptible animals by using weakened strains of the causal organism had been established. In 1881, the Pasteur vaccine for anthrax was in general use, followed by rabies in 1885. Second, antibiotics revolutionized medicine and together with vaccinations have almost completely eradicated many once common diseases. Third, medical imaging allows its veterinarians and doctors to see beyond skin and bone to accurately diagnose and treat diseases. X-rays, radiography, ultrasound, and MRI scans have all helped to ensure that modern veterinary science and medicine are the least invasive while ensuring the best outcomes for patients. Fourth, artificial intelligence, AI as is commonly known these days, computers can learn to identify patterns from huge volumes of big data being generated from genomics projects and electronic medical records from across the globe. It has fundamentally amplified our understanding of diseases and how to treat them. Fifth, our rapidly evolving understanding of DNA has propelled medical knowledge and treatments and transformed the way we solve crimes. Without the discovery of DNA, we would not have ongoing groundbreaking studies in genome mapping and sequencing. Looking only at these examples, ladies and gentlemen, it is clear that the essence of how dynamic of how the dynamic nature of science and technology contributes to society is the creation of new knowledge. Second, utilizing that knowledge to ultimately boost the prosperity of human lives. Science is valued because the application of scientific knowledge helps to satisfy many basic human needs, improving living standards, and solve the various problems facing society. In our time, science is also often justified to the public as driving economic growth and sustainability, and is being linked to personal health and technological advancement in order to secure funding. Seemingly, there are explicit reasons why we can and need to celebrate progress in science over many decades and centuries. But it would suffice to just celebrate and appreciate new scientific discovery that would benefit humanity. Do we need to do much more to ensure and emphasize the application of science in education? Valenti Rule, a scientist and researcher, puts it in perspective by saying that, open quote, the deliberate and consistent addition of new scientific knowledge to enhance education might seem an obvious application of science, but it is often ignored, close quote. He adds to this by stating that, open quote, it is time to seriously consider how science and research can contribute to education at all levels of society, close quote. What does this mean, ladies and gentlemen? When discussing education, we should therefore consider not only those who have no access to basic education, but also a considerable fraction of populations of so-called developed countries who have no recent science education. Furthermore, institutions should make a greater effort to communicate to society what science is and what it is not, and how it is done, and what are its main results, and what are they useful for, or in other words, what scientific institutions are not just good at, but what they are good for. This will be the best way of demystifying science and scientists and elevating society's scientific literacy. In 2020, an article by Forbes stated that already 25 years ago, a scientist like Carl Sagan estimated that 95% of American adults were scientifically illiterate. Better education of the general public would assist to enable informed debate and decision making about the safe and sustainable application of new technologies. Indeed, a more enlightened society would assist in addressing problems such as the misuse of and misinformation about scientific discovery. Some people call that fake news these days. Having said that, consider the following for a moment. An unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic has already caused havoc in terms of lives lost, economic instability, economic productivity, even economic growth, if you like, suffering and unemployment. Scientists have been studying coronaviruses, of which SARS-CoV-2 is a member of for over 50 years. Subsequently, the discovery of vaccines against the virus was made possible by the tireless work of scientists across the globe who also relied on existing data on the structure, genome, life cycle of this type of virus. However, while scientific discoveries will always be under scrutiny, and with reason, the unfortunate spreading of misinformation, fake news, and conspiracy theories will always be to the detriment of even life-changing discoveries. We're living in that era right now. Using this current example, the question is thus that if society was more knowledge-based and had an understanding of how science and research are shaping the world, to what degree would the general perceptions with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic have been different? I think I venture to say very different. The mentioned Forbes article also states that the general public lacks awareness of how science impacts politics, policy, and our future, or rather our futures, which leaves the potential for people to be either become apathetic or openly hostile towards the scientific process and the scientific community, and indeed scientific knowledge itself and scientific facts. For these and other reasons, Rule and other scientists set forth the argument that if scientific knowledge and research was more proficiently diffused to the general public to create scientific awareness and a consciousness, I would say, it has enormous potential to address the challenges facing us in the present day education. A stronger emphasis on formal science education should lead to a more informed knowledge-based society. In other words, science literacy, information literacy would immensely benefit society. Furthermore, science is not only necessary for humanity to thrive socially, environmentally, and economically in future, but it is also the best tool to educate and maintain our cultural heritage. For me, it also means that the enhancement of knowledge and intellect and the improvement of society as a whole should be prioritized, and not only through economic competitiveness and economic growth, more so as institutions of higher learning. We also have a responsibility in this regard. How can we do this, distinguished guests? First, formal education should place a much larger emphasis on teaching young people how science has shaped and is shaping and advancing human culture and well-being. Second, we need to educate the educators and adopt and adjust adequate science curricula at university level. Third, scientists themselves need to get more involved in both schools and universities. They need to more actively engage in the diffusion of science to the general public rather than just journalists and other communicators. In other words, a social engagement role, if you like, a translating role, if you like, that makes the public better understand science. In this way, we can have citizen scientists and science lovers and have a society that celebrates science with intellectual confidence and sound scientific evidence. Ladies and gentlemen, history has shown us that science and change are intrinsically linked. Science is almost always subject to change as new evidence becomes available. While we indeed have reason to celebrate change and progress in science, it also needs to serve as a guideline and a lesson for the future. A quote by Louise Yako sums it up best. Open quote, "I suddenly realized that it is important to never lose sight and insight of the fact that what is happening today has happened yesterday and will probably happen tomorrow as well. And if we don't truly understand and learn from and interrogate history," close quote. The magnitude and pace of change in the veterinary healthcare environment demand that faculties such as this one change and change constantly. The only constant in life, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, is change. The ultimate goals of veterinary education have not changed, but the drastic nature of change is taking place all around and within veterinary education make it more critical than ever to keep in mind what is really important. We need to embrace change, but at the same time, we must be exquisitely attuned to what is really important. And in this faculty and the University of Pretoria, we must make sure that the academic community never loses sight of what that is. Just more than 100 years ago, the faculty at its founding in the major disease burden of the country at the time, which was not a veterinary disease, through Arnold Taylor's remarkable ability to make the smallpox vaccine, he highlighted the importance and the responsibility of the veterinary profession to both human and animal health. This faculty has shown that it is not only recognizes this responsibility, but that it is building on the important role it should play in the local and global health and well-being of all. It is also defined in the faculty's research focus areas: African wildlife health and management, sustainable livelihoods and well-being, translational medicine, and pathobiology of disease. All of them have interlinking critical elements of the One Health approach that intends to look at the driver of current and emerging diseases at the interface. Last week when I chaired a board meeting at Montpellier University, I was reminded by the colleagues at Montpellier that colleagues from this faculty are taking up a challenge to build a large global research project around the One Health initiative. However, new technologies are revolutionizing our ability to prevent, diagnose, and treat many diseases. Examples of these are genome editing, synthetic biology, and digital health technologies, such as artificial intelligence, AI, all of which can solve intrinsic problems. These technologies have provided impetus to the faculty's decision to embark upon several new research themes, such as regenerative and molecular medicine and smart diagnostics, given the digital world we live in. Since 1920, when Taylor enrolled his first 8 students, veterinary education has been at the forefront of animal production, health, and welfare. The faculty has grown into a world-class facility with nearly 1,500 undergraduate and postgraduate students, over 100 academic staff members, and close to 300 professional, administrative, and support staff. It has trained over 5,000 veterinarians in the last 100 years, bearing in mind it's the only one in South Africa and about the second in Southern Africa. Over the years, the faculty has also been highly active in addressing the needs of the country. The following are examples. Farmer development. Faculty plays an important role in developing farmers to allow for optimal production in small-scale farming system. One Health. The faculty focuses on One Health and is teaching school kids about the impact of disease, ensuring that they are able to identify and prevent zoonosis from developing in their communities. Farmer development. Through our alumni disease diagnostics and studies on disease dynamics, the faculty plays a key role in improving farm productivity to both support food security, and sustainability, and allow for an export market to develop. Animal welfare and well-being. Through the work of staff and students and alumni, the veterinary profession has undoubtedly enhanced the welfare and well-being of animals in the country. This is important, as a country's maturity can best be judged by the manner in which it treats other sentient animals. As we learn to respect all life, we learn to respect fellow members of our communities, and in the process, better ourselves. The University of Pretoria is proud to be associated with this faculty. It's one of the jewels in the crown. It has excelled to become an institution that is making dynamic strides in being internationally recognized for its pioneering achievements and innovation in support of the university's research-intensive ambition. Today, we are not only celebrating its current and ongoing research achievements, but also its history of just more than 100 years, a century during which numerous scientists and researchers have contributed towards making it the proud institution it is today. Distinguished guests, in conclusion, the next 100 years in the history of this faculty, I hazard a guess that a 21st century faculty and its members must have the same kind of tenacious and even fanatical commitment to the advancement of science and research as scientists in our history. Let us take ownership of our roles in a grand mission that is shared by all members of the faculty and the University of Pretoria. Let us work together to ensure future institutional ascendancy and quality. In the same energetic way, scientists such as Sir Arnold Thiele and Alexander Graham Bell exuded their science and research. Let us make our voices heard at every opportunity. To society, the general public, the country, and the world. Thank you.
Insightful talk. As commemoration of the event, I'd like to hand over a little certificate from the faculty so that you remember this day. Thank you.